Good evening, this is Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. On the show tonight, the Congress makes key promises on jobs and farmer distress in its manifesto. The Prime Minister asks the people of India for more time. Can Rahul Gandhi move the narrative away from nationalism and national security? Former Finance Minister and Chairman of the Congress's Manifesto Committee, P Chidambaram, joins us a little later on the programme. But first, let's take a look at the details of the Congress's manifesto that was released today. There were some key promises. Top of that list, the promise to create jobs by expanding the education and the health sector and filling in lakhs of vacancies in government jobs. The Nyay minimum income scheme that Rahul Gandhi had recently announced also figures very high up there, promising the poorest Indian families 72,000 rupees a year. The Congress has also promised a separate farmers' budget, much like a separate railway budget that used to exist, and that farmers who default on loans will not face criminal cases any longer. Manrega, they say, will be 150 days instead of the current 100 days that it is. And there's also a promise to spend 6% of the budget on education and to waive permits for new businesses or startups for 3 years. Women's security is also another key issue. At that manifesto launched today, Rahul Gandhi was flanked by his mother, Sonia Gandhi, former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh and other key leaders of the Congress. It was here that he directly took on the Prime Minister on what he says are the real issues in this election.
नैरेटिव न्याय है। नैरेटिव है कि अगर नरेंद्र मोदी अनिल अंबानी को 30,000 करोड़ रुपए दे सकता है जेब में, पॉकेट में डायरेक्ट, तो कांग्रेस पार्टी 20% गरीब लोगों को पैसा दे सकती है। नरेंद्र मोदी जी को शॉक इफेक्ट लगा और नरेंद्र मोदी एक के बाद एक किसी न किसी चीज के पीछे छुप रहे हैं, मगर देश का प्रधानमंत्री देश की सच्चाई से नहीं छुप सकता है। देश की सच्चाई है कि देश में बेरोजगारी है। देश की सच्चाई है कि देश का किसान तड़प रहा है, जी नहीं पा रहा है, आत्महत्या कर रहा है। देश की सच्चाई है कि नरेंद्र मोदी ने वायदा किया था अच्छे दिन की, मगर चौकीदार ने चोरी करवाई है। यह सच्चाई है।
However, the BJP hit back, picking up on the security-related themes in the Congress document, such as the Congress's decision to say that they wanted to scrap the Sedition law, also amending the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which gives a wide range of powers to the army. Arun Jaitley held a press conference saying that much of Rahul Gandhi's promises were economically unviable and also dangerous.
When out of ignorance he makes unimplementable and dangerous promises, I am sure the country will not be in a mood to oblige him. Some of the ideas are positively dangerous. They are an agenda for the balkanization of India. It appears that some of the important points have been drafted by the Congress President's friends in the Tukde Tukde gang. वो क्या-क्या चीज कहते हैं कि इंडियन पीनल कोड से सेक्शन 124 कैपिटल ए सेडिशन हटा दिया जाएगा। देशद्रोह करना अब अपराध नहीं होगा। जो पार्टी इस तरह का घोषणा करती है वो इस देश के एक भी वोट की हकदार नहीं है।
And while that face-off was happening, Prime Minister Modi was campaigning in Bihar today. When he used to campaign before the 2014 elections, he would tell people that you gave the Congress 60 years, give me just 60 months to change India's future. Today, however, the Prime Minister told a rally in Bihar that he needs more time since a lot of work is unfinished.
मैंने कभी दावा नहीं किया कि मैंने सारे काम पूरे कर लिए। वो 70 साल के बाद भी दावा नहीं कर सकते, तो मैं 5 साल में कैसे कर सकता? अब भी बहुत कुछ करना है, बहुत कुछ करने का माना है और इसके लिए निरंतर प्रयास की जरूरत है और उसके लिए मुझे आपके निरंतर आशीर्वाद की भी जरूरत है।
So the question tonight is whether the Congress is going to be successfully able to shift the narrative that it wants to away from national security to bread and butter issues like jobs. Here in the studio with us, we have Pawan Khera, national spokesperson of the Congress. Amitabh Dubey is a member of the Congress and a political analyst. Mr. Deshratan Nigam, political analyst, lawyer and sympathizer of the BJP. Senior economic journalist Pooja Mehra in the studio with us. She's just done a book on the economy. And we'll begin with Yogendra Yadav, the national president of Swaraj India tonight. Mr. Yadav, what did you think on a scale of 1 to 10 of the manifesto and the issues that it has listed out? Certainly, it's easy for parties to make big promises. The question is whether or not they will follow through on those. But do you think that it changes the conversation back to this narrative on jobs and employment and rural distress, or are we still some way away from that?
I hope it does. Anything that does, I would welcome it, because we are witnessing one of the most critical elections in the history of this country. If 1977 election was about deciding whether India remains democratic or not, 2019 is about whether India remains India or not. This republic is being dismantled right now. And just in that critical election, dodge, derail, distract techniques are being adopted. We, instead of discussing what the record of the government of the last 5 years was, we are discussing how many Muslims are there in Wayanad, who were killed in Balakot, what not, how many Chaukidar has, what kind of followers. So if this budget, if this election manifesto of the Congress party serves just one purpose, namely to bring the conversation back to real issues, I would be happy. I have all kinds of differences. This is clearly not the manifesto I would have written. This is not a manifesto that I would agree with. But I must say, it's not at least a Jumla manifesto. It's a serious document.
Why is it a manifesto you wouldn't have
that
written?
Need to be interrogated.
Why is it a manifesto you
Because
wouldn't
I
agree
think
with?
there are different ways of doing it in terms of economic policy. The economic policy of the BJP and Congress in its fundamentals is very similar. The difference is in how much importance you give to the poor and so on. But in structural economic policy, both of them follow very closely similar policies. But forget that. For me, that's really not the important issue today. For me, the real issue is, are we discussing poor? The Nyaya scheme needs to be interrogated. I think Congress is being less than honest in telling us where the resources would be raised. But at least we are talking about the poor. On the farmers, what the Congress has promised is not exactly what the farmers had demanded. I'm not fully satisfied, but at least someone is discussing farmers. On job, we need to ask, where would those 20 lakh jobs come from state governments? Will Congress at least commit that its own governments would do this? But at least someone is talking about jobs. Someone is talking about 6% RT to education, 3% to health, extension of RTE, Forest Act, and these real issues of freedom in this country. For me, that is important. But having said all that, Nidhi, I personally remain somewhat skeptical of whether Congress would be able to do so. And the reason is, it's too late. It's not too little, but it is too late. Congress's ability to communicate remains very poor. And in any case, credibility of Congress, when they say, we've done it, we'll do it again, this doesn't sound like a credible claim. That's what
interesting
worries
you
me.
say that, and I'm going to take that to the Congress panelists in just a moment. I want to ask Mr. Deshratan Nigam, though, that it's interesting that when Arun Jaitley held that press conference today, the focus was largely on, again, the sort of security-related issues like sedition, AFSPA, etc. Now, when he says the Congress president's friends in the Tukde gang seem to have drawn up this manifesto, you do know, of course, that General Huda, who was the man who was in charge of the surgical strikes of 2016, was the man who advised the Congress party on security matters. Is it Mr. Jaitley's contention that he too is a part of the Tukde gang?
See, Tukde is a metaphor he used when you try to dilute Armed Forces Special Act. When you want to remove 124A, take it as a metaphor, not in terms of persons. I don't know what report General Huda has given. I don't think it has been made public, even by the Congress. There is not much reflection out here in the manifesto so far as the issues of security is concerned. And when you talk of, judicial killing of Afzal Guru, you call it a judicial killing. That is where 124A and all comes into play. Obviously, it has to be used on a case-by-case basis. So there is a lot of differences out here. And so far as Mr. Yogendra Yadav said about credibility, let me tell you a few points about credibility of whether Congress will be able to. It may sound on theory unimplementable.
Before you do that, and please do that, I'm just saying that it's interesting that Mr. Jaitley did not really take on have sort of a detailed this thing on jobs, on unemployment, on the farmer issue. I mean, the BJP keeps seeking to move the conversation away from that towards security at any cost. And do you think, I mean, as someone who's looking at this not as a member of the BJP but as a supporter, as an analyst, that this is what they think will work for them at the end of the day?
It is both. National security and development are going side by side. This is a narrative in this election. Both will play and both will, Congress will try to justify its own way, and BJP will obviously point out previous examples and the present adequate response. Let me tell you about some credibility about, Congress promised direct benefit transfer to the farmer in 2004 and 2009. It was who implemented? Mr. Modi in this budget. Then this electricity, each household will get an electricity by 2014, not done. It is now about 95%, touching 95% done by Mr. Modi. OROP, 500 crore only in 2014 was allocated. More than 35,000 crore has been allocated by, this was promised by the Congress in this budget. Then let me take it to GST. Obviously, they said by 2010. It was not implemented by that. 2017 it was implemented
who
by.
opposed GST, right?
No, they also opposed. It's not that they had to be brought on record on the platform.
No, they did. But who? I mean, the whole opposition to GST was among the chief ministers was then Mr. Modi.
Yes, it was. But ultimately.
But your bigger point is they make promises,
but they
which
don't.
they're not able to follow through.
Let me give you more examples. They promised broadband in all villages. Only 59 villages till 2049. Today it is more than 95% coverage of broadband.
Okay, so I get your point.
Let's take it defense acquisition, no deals.
I think dedicate the program to him. You can't give him 10 minutes, one interrupted. I'm sorry.
I never do that.
It's our manifesto and I'm not allowed to speak.
I never do that.
Hear the criticism first. Hear the criticism.
Without us talking first.
You will. There's Mr. Chidambaram on for half an hour after this. I think let's be fair.
High inflation with low growth was that.
Okay, so
and
I
look
get
at Ayushman Bharat. They promised security, health security. Ayushman Bharat was implemented.
Okay, so let me take that to Pawan Khera then.
Poor, reservation, EWS quota, they promised, they did not.
Are you just good at making promises and not delivering on them? That is what Mr. Nigam is saying.
I'll respond to him also. Number one, AFSPA. Let's start with the most contentious of this issues of this manifesto. Sedition also I'll come to. In the 2014 manifesto before the Kashmir election, BJP's manifesto talks about repealing AFSPA. I challenge you. Number two, we are not talking about repealing AFSPA. We are only talking about three aspects. Number one, enforced disappearance. Number two, sexual violence. Number three, torture. Are you opposed to this? You want sexual violence? You want torture? You want enforced disappearance? You tell us
nobody wants.
Let me finish.
But there's a
so these are the
mechanism
only
there
three aspects which we are trying to repeal. We are only amending these three aspects.
You are not
and
repealing.
No, we are not.
You are only reviewing.
We are only reviewing these three aspects.
And
please don't mislead.
So
Don't interrupt also and don't mislead also.
Review means.
Don't mislead, don't interrupt. Let me finish.
It may
Let me
remain.
finish.
Okay,
I know what review means.
One second.
I also know what your manifesto spoke about before the Kashmir election. So आपके तो दो चेहरे आप दिखाइए भी मत. हमने ये कहा वो नहीं किया. राहुल गांधी ने 3 इलेक्शन जो अभी राज्यों में हम जीते हैं, he was very clear about farm loan within 10 days. We didn't even take 10 days. So our credibility, our commitment, people know, our consistency, people know. आपकी तरह 2 करोड़ नौकरी नहीं बोला, आपकी तरह 15 लाख रुपए नहीं बोला. We are very realistic when we talk about jobs. 22 lakh vacancies. Now please tell the national network today that 21 states held by the BJP will not cooperate. Please let people know कि आप वो रिक्त पद नहीं भरेंगे. बता दीजिए आप नहीं cooperate करेंगे.
No problem.
By the way, this is just an interesting aside.
These are measurable
promises.
promises. Sorry, Nidhi, these are measurable promises. आप कश्मीर पे तो मुंह भी मत खोले तो अच्छा रहेगा. आपका इंटरलॉक्यूटर अफजल गुरु के बेटे के पासपोर्ट के लिए लड़ाई लड़ रहा है आपसे. आपका अपना इंटरलॉक्यूटर है तो कश्मीर पे तो आप बोलिए भी मत.
ANI, the news agency has just tweeted.
No fake
statement. It's his quote.
No fake narrative.
One second.
No, I'm sorry.
News agency. Pawan, let me speak. ANI has just tweeted, quoting Home Ministry sources, that AFSPA has actually just been withdrawn from 3 districts of Arunachal Pradesh just now. So, I mean, you know, we can...
मुझसे क्या पूछ रहे हैं?
बता रही हूँ. I'm just making a comment here.
I can answer that.
I mean, so... answer it, please. I mean, you know,
telling you.
there
And
obviously was a
from
case.
2014
There was
Kashmir
obviously a case
manifesto of
made
yours.
to remove ASFA from these
obviously,
areas.
you know, ASFA is a work in motion and continuously under review. If there are, you know, a
So
situation...
what's wrong with it if they put it in the manifesto?
If we
then?
talk against sexual
Arre,
violence,
arre,
Again,
let me
credibility. The issue is of the credibility. They
अरे,
promise
टुकड़े-
but
टुकड़े
don't
क्यों बोल रहे हैं
deliver.
फिर आप?
That is the...
फिर
That is,
टुकड़े-
see,
टुकड़े
I
क्यों बोल
gave
रहे हैं
you
आप?
9 points where they promised and the BJP government
No,
delivered.
please ask him to
Till
stick to AFSPA and stick
2004.
to टुकड़े first.
AFSA will be reviewed. Obviously, there's a continuous mechanism there
आप
in
करें
government
तो
of
अच्छा है,
India.
हम करें तो टुकड़े हैं.
There's nothing new. There's nothing new
So
there
then
of
why-
offer.
so
Then
BJP,
what is
what's
Mr.
up
Arun
about
Jaitley
it?
trying to dance about?
See, they are saying universally. It has to be district-wise, case-wise. You know, you got to
We
review
didn't
it.
say
They haven't said
universally.
universally.
Where is the word
They-
universal? Sorry,
they-
Nidhi.
No, no,
It's
no,
my
I'm saying
manifesto.
the
I'll
same thing.
defend it.
So where is there in the
the word
manifesto?
universal?
Which state are you talking
Where
about
is
in
the
your
word
manifesto?
universal?
Please tell me.
Please tell me where is the word
If
universal?
you
No,
don't-
you stick
no,
to what you say
I'll
first.
tell you, I'll
Don't
tell you.
behave like
I'll
Okay,
tell
let
you.
him answer.
Lawyer-
Pawan,
lawyer
let him
tell
answer.
me.
Pawan,
Please.
Pawan,
I'll tell you.
Please.
I'll tell you. Don't be personal.
No,
Let
I'm
him-
saying you're a senior lawyer. Behave like a senior lawyer.
I am.
Where did I
I
use
am.
the
I
word
am.
universal?
Let him answer. Let him answer
See.
that. Like to come to Amitabh
See,
and Pooja.
when
Yes.
I say universal, they are not state-specific. They've just said general review.
What's
of-
wrong with that?
No, I'm not
ASFA
saying.
applies to
No,
the
you
entire-
review, but
yeah.
there is also, please explain it. Review means these may remain also after review. There is a 2 possibility. Either you remove it or you don't remove it.
But
so
that's okay. You can have a review.
So
Why do you have to
nobody
decide
stop.
now?
No, nobody stops them from reviewing. But the fact is, given the narrative in recent past that they take a contrary stand to the policies of the government of India, and without even applying their mind. That is what my point is. You just say review, then you say we'll repeal. It's a review
never said
word.
repeal.
Yes, you just said repeal.
No.
Yes,
no,
yes,
no,
yes.
sir,
We'll
no.
repeal.
I said review on three issues.
Yeah.
Sexual
Sexual
violence,
violence, torture.
enforced
Yeah.
disappearance and torture.
Okay, let me ask
Please.
Amitabh about this because
आपको अगर नहीं समझ में आया तो 4 भाषाओं में आपके पास मैं आज
the
पहुंचा
point is Amitabh, how does the opposition Congress then sort of counter this national security versus jobs narrative? I mean, perhaps at the end of the day, bread and butter issues would matter a lot more to people, but that doesn't mean national security does not. So do you think that the manifesto today adequately sort of spells out the challenges on all these fronts?
I think the job of the manifesto, this Congress manifesto, is to undo the damage done to the economy in the last 5 years. And whatever happens on the national security front is not going to solve the problems of bread and butter problems that the farmers, small businesses, consumers, citizens are facing. So I think it's very clear that national security is important, but a surgical strike is not going to feed empty stomachs. And this manifesto is very clearly focused on coming up with very concrete proposals based on a consultation with thousands of people across the country to ask them how they think these issues might have to be resolved, and has come up with some very concrete proposals for these. What's interesting is that in the last 5 years, for a supposedly right-wing government, we've seen a huge expansion of state power, whether it's through tax terrorism, and they used to say the UPA did tax terrorism, so that you have to develop a new word for what's been going on under the NDA, expansion of the role of the state, demonetization, what it did to property rights, and so on and so forth. And what I find positive about this manifesto, for instance, if you take MSMEs, they've gone through a huge contraction over the last few years. 1 crore of jobs, as you know, were lost in 2018. And this comes up with a very concrete forbearance policy for MSMEs, that all new MSMEs starting 1st April 2019 will be given 3 years in which
no
they don't
permits,
have to focus on permits, except for some very basic important ones like minimum wage and so on. This is, I would say, a mini version of the 1991 reform as far as MSMEs are concerned. This is a huge deregulation. It will have a big impact on hiring and jobs.
Okay.
And this has nothing to do with national
So
security.
let me ask Pooja then, just as a sort of independent observer who's standing back and watching all this. Economically, because that's what you would have been looking at closely, is this manifesto, promising something that can be delivered, or are you skeptical like Yogendra Yadav about how this is actually going to work out?
I think what I like about the economic part of the manifesto is the conceptual clarity on what ails the economy at the moment and what is it that needs to be fixed. the savings rate, the investment rate. I think it makes the right noises on jobs being an issue. I have some issues with Nyay, but leaving that aside, that's a design problem. Probably a government who gets elected will look at that. But other than that, the rest of what they say on the economic front, I think they make the right noises. And I also want to say that, you know, unlike everybody else, I don't see national security versus economy, bread and butter issues as conflicting. You know, economic security is a very big part of national security, and I don't know why in the narrative we seem to just keep missing that out. If you have armies and armies of youngsters out on the roads without jobs, and in another 2 or 3 years they are not gainfully employed, and you know, when I say gainfully employed, it's not that they should be underemployed. They should get the kind of wages and salaries and incomes they should be able to earn that is commensurate with their aspiration for the kind of consumption
good
and
jobs,
saving.
which is what Raghuram Rajan was talking about last week.
So if you're not going to do that in the next 3 years, you have a huge economic security which will then morph into all kinds of other security issues, safety issues, a whole lot of other kind of problems. And I don't think you can look at this as, you know, national security versus economic security is a part of national security.
That's a good point. But Yogendra Yadav, even if we do have a debate on, say, just purely national security, the problem seems to be that we can't seem to do it without sort of it degenerating into this, well, if you're asking a question on why there was an intelligence failure, you're a Pakistani. If you're asking, you know, why was RDX brought into Jammu, you're a Pakistani. Anybody who raises a question on what has gone wrong with our internal security establishment, you're a Pakistani. Now, I think India needs to have a constructive debate on internal security. And why is it that we're just unable to do that? And do you think that, again, that's something, you know, that the Congress also as the primary opposition party needs to learn to do better? Because, you know, they got into this whole twist about Sam Pitroda's remarks. He didn't actually say anything that was so earth-shattering, but they were so on the defensive on that. How does the opposition sort of take this and turn it around and say, no, these are legitimate questions?
Nidhi, frankly, if you were to read the Congress manifesto on the national security, internal security, external security part, and if you were to read the BJP's previous manifesto, there's actually very little to distinguish them. The fact is that on foreign policy and on issues of national security, we've had a tradition of a larger national consensus. Congress has adhered to it. Now, the problem is that BJP needs to discover differences. And what the BJP has been doing for the last month and a half is to set a trap and say, come, put your foot in it. BJP wants to show that there is difference and the tiniest hint of it, and they can blow it up. Congress has more than once stepped into that trap. And the difficulty is that over the years, Congress, which objectively could have claimed that they have much better track on national security, are today on the defensive. They don't enjoy that kind of credibility. So much of the national discourse is not about real issues. Pawan Kheda correctly pointed out, BJP was the party which said that we will not implement AFSPA in Jammu and Kashmir. And this point about AFSPA being changed, it has been done on recommendation of Justice Jeevan Reddy Commission's report. These are very serious documents. But we have reached a point where facts do not matter. Just impressions and claims matter. Take the question of sedition. Every great Indian nationalist said this sedition is a colonial law, and in an independent India, sedition has no role. Now the trouble is BJP people don't remember our national struggle. Clearly they had nothing to do with it. So as a result, it has sunk into a situation where on issues to do with nation and security, you can put everyone on defensive, and BJP has captured it, thanks to a little assistance from Election Commission as well. So that's the situation as of today. I just also wanted to say that the kind of questions, for example, Pooja Mehra is raising today, design issues, these are serious interrogation, must be done to Congress manifesto. This country has suffered one Jumla government for 5 years. The last thing we want is one more Jumla government whose claims are not interrogated. So the one positive thing I see in whatever has been happening for the last 3-4 days is that at least someone is examining claims. And I sincerely hope when BJP comes up with its counter promises, those will also be examined.
And Amitabh, would you agree that, you know, that the Congress really is facing the heat on Nyay, for example? I mean, economists today, and I've asked Mr. Chidambaram about that as well, are raising a lot of questions about how this is going to be funded, and he wasn't very clear. I mean, he just said the middle class is not the average middle class won't be taxed, but it's not entirely clear to a lot of people on where the funding is going to come from, how we will pay for this if existing subsidies continue, for example.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that these questions are being asked, questions that were unfortunately not asked of the sitting government when Mr. Modi made claims about doubling farmers' incomes and so on. And I think the Congress party and the next government, if it forms a government, should answer these questions. But I think it's quite clear, a couple of things are clear. They're going to phase it in, so it's not going to be a budget hit next year. It's going to accumulate over time. And there will be some rolling back of subsidies. Now, what these subsidies are has to be discussed by the next government. But there are some subsidies that are obviously less meritorious than others, and I think there will be a discussion about that. And there probably will be revenue raising as well. So I think it's, rather than get stuck on this, I think it's clear that this program is so important that if the Congress were to win the next election, come to power and not deliver on this, then there would be a serious reaction. So I think I would take their word for, once you've made this kind of a promise, you really have to deliver it.
All right.